Ron?
Well, I think we first really met Father Seraphim at Holy Resurrection Church after we became members there, which was in September of 1971. See, almost 40 years. We, of course, used to go to the Vespers, and that's where we met Father Seraphim. At that time, he was a student at the Anglican Church College out at UBC, and he was actually in the parish where I had grown up, which was St. Peter's, Vancouver, and my mother had met him there as well. But anyway, he used to come to Holy Resurrection because he had a long-standing acquaintance with Orthodox matters and was very interested. And so that's where we first met him and began to talk to him and have him out to our home and got to know him quite well. And so we just, our friendship was just like continued from that time. When he was a priest, an Anglican priest at Ponoka in Alberta for several years, and often in the wintertime he would get a flu or a cold which would linger on and on and on, so he'd usually manage to take a couple of weeks off and he would come down to Vancouver here, and then Ed would look after him and restore him to health and that sort of thing. And then, but we always said to him, but you should be Orthodox, Lidika. You must become Orthodox. And he'd say, well, in the fullness of time when the Lord shows me, and then finally he did become Orthodox. So we always say we pushed him a little bit to become Orthodox. But we knew he loved Orthodoxy and certainly had more than one foot in the door for many, many years.
We just held him over the threshold.
Yes. And then we had, when we started our English parish out here, we had a priest from the United States, Father Stephen Slipko. Actually, he's at Holy Resurrection, or he was at Holy Resurrection for a while, and he's at the Ukrainian church here. But at that time, because the Ukrainians in the United States and Canada were considered non-canonical, the Archbishop Sylvester in Montreal would not accept Father Stephen, and he said, no, you can't have services with this man, he's non-canonical. And so we floundered around for a couple of years, and then in the spring of 1987 we had a call from Father Seraphim who said, oh, you must have heard by now I'm about to be made a bishop, and I have a priest from Canada, Father Lawrence Farley, who's in St. Tikhon's, and he wants to come back to Canada, and he could be your priest if he came back into the OCA. So I said, we're coming, we're coming, we're coming. So we came back into the OCA, and Vladika Seraphim was kind enough to send us Father Lawrence, and since then our parish has really, really flourished. We've done really well at St. Herman's. Oh, many times over the years, you know, always at least once a year when he was out this way, he'd try and stay with us if he possibly could. And of course, he's such a loving, kind person that everybody wanted him to come to their house, so there were many, many demands placed on him, but whenever he could, he would say, well, can you get me a night at the Hartleys? And we always said, the Hartley Hilton is your home, you're most welcome here. So we always told him that in our home, he wasn't allowed to be an honoured guest, he was just a member of the family, and we'd say, put your feet up and relax and just take it easy. So, and he seemed to like that.
We always gave him a little sip of wine at bedtime, so he slept well.
Yeah, he always seemed very relaxed with us, and well, we've known him for so many years. In fact, he dandled our children on his knees, you know, when he used to come here, because we have 3 children. My son, who is 41 now, and our daughters just turned 40. They're twins. So Vladika has known them like since they were babies, and as I say, he dandled them on his knee and played games with them, and was always the soul of kindness to them.
When I heard about all the nonsense, I wrote him in Ontario. I didn't know exactly where it was, but I said we wished him well, and he was always welcome here. And at the end, I didn't say I knew exactly what was going on, but we had heard rumors, of course. Blessed are you when men revile you and persecute you and say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad. Great is your reward in heaven.
So just a hint that we had heard
that we
something.
knew, but also we still loved him, you see.
But it doesn't change our feelings towards him in any way. It's just one of these very unfortunate things, and I hope it'll be all right.
Nobody knows the source of all this. Everybody, our Lord was crucified. You know,
they crucified our Master,
Son of God was crucified. So sometimes, as the Lord said, blessed are you when men revile you, because you're pleasing to God. You see, somebody doesn't like him, obviously, and we don't know the full story of this. May never learn it. But we hope that there's so much pressure in the courts now, and everything's in such confusion. innocent people do get even in prison at times, you know, and there've been, actually they've had quite a review of all the old cases in Canada, and some people have been released who have even been jailed for years. You know, they were known to be innocent. The court is made up of human beings, and although they do their best, you know, their mistakes are made. You see, we probably will never find on this side of the world of heaven who is behind this, but we suspect a few things. But our Lord had many enemies, so the better you are, the more enemies you can have.
This wouldn't be published.
No.
Just I wanted to say that when you remember when Metropolitan Herman was out, I don't know how to say, he was the deputy of the Vladika Dimitri, and he spent almost 3 months over there dealing with all these things. And of course he was the first, more of that, he was the secretary of the Holy Synod for 22 or 23 years, and that's why he was involved in those things with the Kondratik family. I think this is the source, the only source, because they finished with them in March, and they now start reversing the history, trying to because
but there are people here too in this area who are very much against Vladika Seraphim.
Actually, I don't know such people. What could he do?
Well, we had the original church that we founded was called St. Nicholas, and it's also down in Langley, about 2 miles from our present church. And Ed and I left that church years ago because it was taken over by a bunch of Romanian people who were very, very pushy. And they just wanted to change everything that we had put there. So we just said, well, we're not coming to church to fight every Sunday. We'll just walk away quietly.
They wanted to make it a completely Romanian priest, Romanian church.
Then it was taken over by Bishop Lazar and Bishop Varlam, and they looked after the parish very well for 20 years. But there was a Romanian faction and a Greek faction. And I guess Bishop Lazar had a very strong personality, so he was able to hold this group together. But when he retired, then the church split, and there was a lot of bitterness on both sides. And Vladika Seraphim, we hoped that he was doing what he thought was best for the church, chose to go with the Romanian group. And it seemed to us, who were working with the Greeks, that he was ignoring the Greeks. But it was just one of these things. But anyway, it finally was settled, and the congregation was in fact dissolved, and another group is renting the church. But the Romanian people who originally started all the trouble are still there, and we've heard them through others speak against Bishop Seraphim very harshly. So we wouldn't be surprised if they were involved in some way.
And a few months ago, one Romanian lady, we never mentioned her name, of course, said to one of the Greek people that we know, "We're not finished with Bishop Seraphim yet." So
and they say they all have contacts in the Winnipeg area.
We may never find the truth behind it. Maybe just
we don't know.
So
we're just guessing.
There's some intrigue.
There's some ill will there.
I remember how he tried to help them. He came here to Vancouver area just to spend one night with them, just one evening to talk to them, and he returned back the same day. So he did it at least twice. For the bishop.
He certainly seemed to be trying hard, and we don't know all the ins and outs because we're not included in the discussions. But it was just one of those very unfortunate things that can happen in the church. Somebody like Vladika Seraphim should be accused. I mean, it's totally beyond comprehension. I mean, there is no kinder man in the world, I'm sure. You know, and one who is more gentle with children, and just a man who radiates Christ. It just, you know, that somebody would accuse him. We couldn't believe it. We just couldn't believe it. And the trouble is, even if Vladika is totally exonerated, which he should be, it's always there. It's not the kind of thing that goes away. You know, it's people years from now will be saying, "Oh, remember that Archbishop? He was accused of this and that." And that's the sad thing, you know, that it's really sort of ruined his life. And Seraphim has been so wonderful. I mean, the church in Canada was virtually neglected for about 10 years. We had no bishop, and it was usually the Metropolitan, I think it was Theodosius at that time, was the locum tenens for Canada. But of course, being the Archbishop of the whole OCA, he didn't have time to do much in Canada, and we never saw him in Canada. And the church was just sort of going downhill. So when we got Seraphim, and he took over, I mean, he's just done a wonderful job of resurrecting the church in Canada and getting things rolling along smoothly. He's just been fabulous. Because it was a very, very hard job, I'm sure.
The children were, of course, when we had we had a son who's now what, 42 now, or 41?
And 42 this month, I guess.
Yeah, 42. That's right, 42 this month,
So
and
his
twin
birthday.
daughters who are about what?
The girls just turned 40.
40, yeah. And they're all married now, and everything is going well. Our son became a computer programmer. In the days computers were just coming in. I'm still computer illiterate.
Yeah, he took his degree in computer science.
At Simon Fraser. And one of our girls got a degree at Simon Fraser and majored in French. She was teaching French in a private school. That's a downsized because of the economy, and she's out of work now. And the other daughter just became a housewife, but her husband...
She homeschools her
homeschools
kids,
as well,
yeah.
and they have 3 children.
And she turned out to be a very talented musician and was a leader of our choir at the church for 20 years, until she quit a couple of years ago. But we started off here in 1978 having services in our little chapel in the backyard, which you must take some pictures of that. And with Father Stephen Slipko, and we didn't have any professional musicians at all, so it was just kind of blundering our way through. Everybody we met, we asked, do you have anything with English words and Russian music that we could use? Because it was really hard to find stuff 40 years ago, really hard to find anything. And so we scrounged everywhere we went, and we just sort of muddled our way through. But then by the time Andrea got to be about 16, she said to me one day, "Oh, I'd really like to do what you do, Mum." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, I'd like to lead the singing." And I said, "Would you?" "Oh, please do," because I don't have a gift for it. And so she took over. She was just 16 years old, and she, over the next few years, she taught herself. She took 1 year at Douglas College of music. It was sort of basically, she was up to about grade 5 in piano, and she worked on that, and she did a lot of vocal stuff. And she taught herself basically how to conduct the choir and everything. And we have a friend who is a Anglican church organist, and she helped Andrea a lot with reading music and singing at sight and that sort of thing. And she just blossomed into the most talented musician. We had a wonderful little choir here at St. Herman's, and the last time I remember we went to a music conference, and she of course wanted to participate in the group that was for people who conducted choirs. And she said, Mum, I'm really worried, because she said, I'm not trained professionally, and they'll probably laugh at the way I conduct a choir. And I said, well, it's always good. I said, give it a try and see what you do. So she went and did her thing with the group, and afterwards 2 or 3 people came up to her and said, we love what you do. Show us what you do. We'd like to learn to do what you do.